Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Postgame Podcast. It's a victory podcast. It's late. Who cares? The Steelers find a way to win 29-27 over the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football, and all those streaks continue. Mike Tomlin ends a streak, finally beats the Bears. The Steelers Monday Night Football at home streak continues. They've now won 50 Monday Night Football games. Anyways, let's bring in the other two guys that know a lot about the Steelers. Bryan Anthony Davis, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that we're smiling, but gosh, this feels weird. This is a weird night, and Ben called it strange but sweet on his post-game interview, and I guess that's what I'm going with tonight.
There you go. Dave Schofield, welcome to the show.
I don't know what I'm doing right now. I don't know how I'm feeling. I don't know what's going on. But can I open this discussion up? I want to read a comment on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers.
This ought to be good.
on the knee-jerk reaction article, because I was filling in. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of it.
Okay, so this isn't a comment on the article.
No, someone commented on the article.
Already.
There's a bunch of comments already. I mean, that's that article. But I was filling in tonight. I started off by saying, I reach over the top rope and get my hand slapped to come in to cover this tonight because my brother was at the game. So I was covering it for him. But here, KD Steele says this. On a week when Dallas got whooped, the Bills got pooped on, and the world turned upside down, can we all be happy we got a win?
You took me by surprise there. I was not expecting a positive comment.
Yeah, no. but no, that's it. It's like, oh my goodness, yes, it was ugly. Oh my goodness, was there so many things that could have gone wrong? Oh my goodness, this, that, or the other thing. Almost handed it away. All those other things. Bottom line is, at the end of the night, one tally goes in the win column. That's what matters.
You're right. Let's start with knee-jerk reactions. Bryan, I want to get yours first. Go ahead.
Knee-jerk reaction was, they won that game. The penalties were crazy going for one team and not the other.
Pokemon King for the win.
Yes, the Pokemon King. I'm not giving it back. That's all I'm going to say. But it seemed like for once we could actually say, hey, calls were not against the Steelers.
Dave, your knee-jerk reaction?
One of the last things I wrote is the knee-jerk reaction article. I have no idea what to think right now. I really don't, because I want to think back to like Pat Freiermuth scoring 2 touchdowns. Doesn't that seem like that was forever ago? Doesn't it seem like it was a whole different game? It was like that game, it completely changed. The Steelers had opportunities Renegade came through in a big way. And then all of a sudden, they're getting, the calls aren't going against them, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying they were bad calls. I'm just saying that things weren't, it's not like everything was piled on. And then you get the touchdown given up on a punt return and just crazy stuff. It doesn't even seem like that was all from the same football game right now.
I'm going to say this, and those that have listened to my podcast, whether it's on YouTube or an audio form, know that, I had over a decade's experience as a head coach, not in football, but anytime you coach in high school or above, I feel like there's certain experiences you gather and you glean from over the years. There were always games where my team would be playing a game where you knew you were the better team. And it just felt like everything at times was going against you, not the entire time. But there were just fluky plays that happened. And you were times you kind of got your team together and said, let's just find a way to win this game and let's get the heck out of the stadium. And then we'll deal with everything later. Like, seriously, let's just win the game, get on the bus, go home. And a lot of times you did find a way to win. And you got on the bus and said, hey, that was ugly, but let's go. Let's burn the tape and let's move on. And I think that's what the Steelers should do here in some regards. There's no need to dwell. I think what happened, if you're trying to pinpoint what happened, I think on defense, the Steelers really got stuck with a mobile quarterback that they didn't know how to, they could never really pin their ears back because Justin Fields he's so dynamic. He rushed for 100 yards last week, was also throwing the ball very well downfield. And he was exposing some of the weaknesses in the secondary when the pass rush doesn't get home. And on top of that, offensively, I just felt like the Steelers never got into a rhythm. The offensive line was getting manhandled. Everyone from Moore to Dotson to Green. Turner had his lapses. Okorafor might be the only guy I didn't notice having a huge major gaffe in the game. And something Dave and I spoke about on Let's Ride on Monday is what's it going to take for Zach Banner to get in the lineup? We might have just seen it. I mean, let's be honest. We might have just seen it. They might be looking to shake it up somehow. Maybe they move Chooks to left. Maybe they put Zach Banner right. We'll see. But I'm not going to complain. Like the Steelers, I got to be honest. I was watching the game with my wife. Kids are in bed. I had this calm over me. I knew they were going to find a way to win. When the Bears scored so early, I was like, I think they're going to drive down and kick the game-winning field goal. I didn't want the Bears to get the ball back, but nonetheless, they did. All right, we have some super chats to get through. We'll talk about this. Trust me. Wilson Pava gives us $9.99. Says a bad Steelers team dominates this game. A good Steelers team either loses or wins ugly. Najee and Muth are absolute gems. Ray is a lump of coal. We definitely need a new kick returner and D-line depth. Go Steelers. Thank you for the tip. Appreciate that, Wilson. All right, here we go. The Lost River Dine-In gives us $1.99. Driving, I'm sorry. Ben delivered in the clutch. That's a big deal. You bet it is a big deal. Steel Dog 88 gives us $5. What happened to Norwood in this game? Seems Millette got more snaps. Well, Norwood was in at the end, the very end, when they went prevent to try to keep them off the scoreboard. All right, here we go. Tyler W gives us $5. 24. What is this stat, Dave or Brian? Anyone? 243 0-2. Is that leading in the fourth, going into the fourth, or something like that? Anyone?
Yeah, 14-point lead in the fourth quarter is what I think it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeesh.
I wouldn't be bragging about that one. Now, but didn't they score on like one of the first plays of the quarter? Weren't they set up the Bears? Weren't they like right there at the cusp to score in the fourth quarter?
They were in nearing the red zone. I think that was when he hit Komet like 2 times, and then they ran it in.
No. They scored on the second play of the quarter. They were, okay. Yeah, you're right. They were at the 43, and he throws the deep ball to Graham, and then it was the Wildcat touchdown.
Anyone else not know that Jimmy Graham was still in the NFL? I didn't.
I knew he was there from Coach Tomlin's press conference. That was the only reason I knew he was still on this team.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else you want to talk about before we get into the stat line? I feel like Brian's barely hanging on. Brian, you gonna be good?
I'm
through this?
Oh, I'm feeling good. I am feeling. I'm feeling great. I'm just. Do you want me to make the announcement? I'll make the announcement. I know everybody wants to know.
I know
I was shirtless the whole game.
Yeah,
I ended up being shirtless the entire game.
Really?
Yes, I wasn't feeling well to go out, and I ended up not going out, and I just took the shirt off. I froze, but no, I did it. Now I'm not doing it next week. They've got to do it on their own. They don't need my shirtlessness to win next week. They have to do it because I'm going to the game, and I'm not doing that in public.
Bryan will be the one representing the 122 crew next week. Bryan will be in my seats.
Well, technically, Brian, the streak does not live or die by your shirtlessness based on the fact that they did win. Was it Sunday Night Football against Seattle? You went to someone else's home. And
he has to be shirtless if he's in his house.
Yes.
That's the rule.
There it is. It is. Bingo. Nailed it. All right. Tyler W gives us another $5. Says, hail Pokemon, the Pokemon King. Cassius Marsh. I really don't want to spend too much time on that. And ESPN, just goodness gracious, will not let it go. And that broadcast was painful, by the way. It had no bearing on the game. The Steelers didn't score points off of that. They ended up punting the ball back, didn't they?
I thought they got a field goal on that one.
I thought that was did they, Brian?
I think they did.
And the plot thickens. All right, Andrew Palladino gives us $4.99. Says, all right, I'm going to say it. The officiating was god awful, but to be favored by the refs for once actually felt pretty great. Ugly win. The officiating was not good, but there were still times there were some phantom calls. The taunting. There was another call that people on ESPN were all up in arms about. Whatever.
Did Ben get that first down?
It was close. His knee was down, but the ball would have been close. It would have been really close.
I mean, there was plenty of times that I saw that I'm like, how did they miss that? Like the James Washington play where they ended up getting a first down, but I'm like, the replay obviously showed he didn't step out of bounds. It was way past the sticks, and they marked him a yard short. Yeah. Holds, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Let's get into the box score. Let's not gripe too much about officiating. They were really on the Steelers side. Let's talk about Ben Roethlisberger on the offense. Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, BTR. Very efficient game, 21-30. That fits right into my perfect 25-35 range. Nice and neat there. 205 yards, 6.8 average, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 4 sacks for 30 yards with a rating of 111.1. We don't have to grade it. If you want to, you can. Otherwise, Bryan, what do you think about BTR's performance on Monday night?
I really liked his performance. His biggest problem was the fact that he was getting attacked, and he was getting sacked 4 times, which should have been the other way around. The Steelers should have been having the majority of the sacks. So yeah, I really did not have a problem with Ben's game whatsoever. In fact, I would put him up there as one of the stars of the game.
There you go. Dave, what do you think about BTR?
I think he did what he had to do to win the Steelers a football game. That's, even being the numbers guy, the stats guy, I'm just saying Ben Roethlisberger did what he had to do despite, taking some hits. And like when he got shook up, I think his head hit Dan Moore's leg on the way down or something like that. But I mean, he took some hits. He came through. He ran the ball. You looked at, the Bears would have been nice to not get a chance to kick that field goal at the end. It's all because the Steelers spiked it at the end, but he was trying to catch him on the field was a guy was running off. They just didn't realize that the Bears were trying to play with 10 players. Good decisions. Didn't throw any interceptions. Didn't fumble the ball at all when he was sacked. That's what I like to see out of this quarterback.
I mean, I'd probably give Ben, if I was grading him, a B. It was a pretty good performance. Like I said, it was efficient. Didn't throw it a ton, didn't have to. They got good field position early in the game, took advantage. Red zone, they were perfect in the red zone. Obviously, Roethlisberger delivering 2 passes to Pat Freiermuth for touchdowns. So I'm not going to complain about Ben too much in this game. Let's get the super chat up here. Lifelong Fan 07 gives us $4.99. Says Steelers played well in the first half, but the injury to Bugs and Claypool made it difficult. Yes, Mike Tomlin did allude to an injury to Chase Claypool. I want to say an ankle, but he said he'll have more information tomorrow.
He came back in for a few plays,
but
then couldn't come back on the next drive.
You're right.
Bugs went back in, didn't he?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he did because
I get very distracted during the games for a lot of reasons. Brandon Keene, $4.99, says, doesn't this season feel more like what we had seen the last 10 years compared to crazy 2020? We are back riding the Stiller coaster ride. This team is a roller coaster ride for sure. For sure. All right, let's go to the running attack. Najee Harris, 22 carries for 62 yards, a 2.8 average. Yikes. 1 touchdown with a long of 13. The Steelers ended up rushing over 100 yards, 32 carries for 105, 3.3 average. Let's talk about the running game. Bryan, go ahead.
I thought it looked great at times, and then he was getting stuffed in situations, but I felt like it wasn't Najee, and that maybe I'm making excuses for Najee. Maybe I'm a Najee apologist, but with that being said, I don't think that he really had a bad game. He was not focused on, but he had a lot of, big runs too. But there's times when there wasn't a hole that I could have run for. And I'm dynamic when I'm running the football.
Shirtless.
Yeah. I grease up pretty good.
Grease lightning. All right, Dave, what do you think about Najee Jerome Harris and or the running attack?
Well, 21 straight games now that the Steelers have won when they've rushed for over 100 yards. So since they went over 100, I guess it still counts. I wanted to see the Steelers just control the game with the run. They weren't able to do that, but man, I mean, there was just times where I'm like, Najee's got nothing, and he sidesteps, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's got 12 or 13 yards on a play that he really should have had nothing. He did not have anywhere to really run tonight, so a lot of the yards that he got were things where he just kind of did it on his own.
Yeah, the offensive line did not get much push in this game and opening.
Not like the last two.
No, the 62 yards he earned every single one of them. And there were a lot of negative plays, more than we had seen during the 3-game stretch. So I thought Najee Harris, it's what you've come to expect. He's protecting the football. He's taking care of things. He's getting something out of nothing. So there you go. Shield 91 gives us $5. Has tried getting into a Hawaiian bar for the last quarter, but waited too long. Thank God for free phone football. Win is a win is a win. Shield 91 hit me on Twitter. He goes, I'm in Hawaii. Your live tweets are helping me. I said, don't talk to me anymore. Like, seriously. I'm sitting in Maryland on my couch watching a TV, and you're in Hawaii watching. Get out of here.
Reading your tweets.
Yeah, reading my tweets. What's wrong with this picture? All right. Okay, let's go to the receiving core now. Deontay Johnson leads 5 catches, 56 yards. Pat Freiermuth 5 for 43, 2 touchdowns. Both of those players were targeted 6 times. And then James Washington, 1 catch for 42 yards. Chase Claypool, 3 for 30. Najee, 3 for 16. They end up 21 receptions for 205. Bryan, what do you think about the receiving core? Pass catchers.
You know what? The pass catchers, it's interesting. We said this a long time ago. We even said this last year when Claypool came into the mix and you had all of these receivers. This is a team that's going to mix it around. You're not going to have that WR1 that you always want. I mean, that everybody seems to crave, but you don't need. With this group, when it's spread around, when you have all these guys you can count on, I mean, we saw Washington catch a big ball. We saw a big first down from Claypool. Of course, Deontay had a huge first down for that team. Big play by Washington with the 42-yarder, which was really strange. Ben had so much time, and one of the truest things that the announcing team from ESPN said all night is it's really rare to see a ball go 42 yards after a quarterback's running around like that. And so that's probably the only thing I'm going to give them credit for all night. But, I mean, I love what they have. And then you have a guy, they showed them meeting before the game. I saw it on Twitter. There was a meeting between Pat Freiermuth and Heath Miller. So Pat Freiermuth had 2 touchdowns. And I got to tell you, I thought he was awesome tonight, and I think that opens up this team for so much more now too. You've got that weapon. So if you're not seeing a 100-yard game from a receiver, don't fret. It doesn't matter. As long as you see a lot of 40s and 50s from everybody else.
Well, I'll tell you what, Pat Freiermuth he's getting close to the middle name treatment. I mean, pretty soon we're going to have to know his middle name like we know Trent Jordan and Benjamin Todd and Najee Jerome. So keep that in mind. Tom Muir gives us $1. He says $1 for each W in the streak. I had a heart attack. Tom used to give us $1 for every win. Now it's just in the streak. He's getting cheap on us. I'm just joking.
No, don't do that to Tom. Don't do that to Tom.
Thank you for the tip. Dave, go ahead and talk about the pass catchers.
You've kind of got to like the whole notion that for these guys, they would probably love to have the big numbers, but man, who you going to stop? You going to try to stop Freiermuth. You're going to try to stop Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I mean, James Washington, only had the 1 catch for 42 yards. And it's because he was, had the heads up to come back to the ball because, Ben rolling out. He was just about, I thought he was going to get that ball knocked out from behind before he threw it when he was, queuing up to heave it. I was just happy to see that end up being a completion. What was there? Maybe nobody had more than 2 non-catches when they were targeted. You know what I'm saying? It's not like someone was targeted 10 times and had 4 receptions. So you got to like the efficiency. You got to like guys just doing what they need to do to win the friggin' game.
On a day where Derek Watt and Kevin Rader even find their way on the reception ledger. How about that? Take that. The Steelers receiving core did their job. Dave, that's kind of what you alluded to there. I mean, the ball went their way. They brought it down more often than not. Chase Claypool had a good 50-50 back shoulder catch. James Washington, we know the 42-yard. Deontay Johnson, that play looked eerily similar to the same play they ran against the Browns that kind of clinched the win against Cleveland. Honestly,
I thought the one to Claypool where he got hurt had the potential to look like that, and they made the diving, spinning tackle and hurt his ankle.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's a short week now for the Steelers. Mike Tomlin will meet with the media on Tuesday. We'll have all that coverage for you behind thesteelcurtain.com. So make sure you follow us there and on our podcast platform. It's going to be a quick turnaround. So we're going to get you everything we can. Now let's talk about the position group that I think needs the most attention on the offensive side of the football, and that is the offensive line. They did surrender those 4 sacks to Ben Roethlisberger. When I look at quarterback hits, though, 5 quarterback hits for the Chicago Bears. I just did not like the way the offensive Kendrick Green, I thought, played a really bad game.
Struggled at times.
Inconsistent. Well, he got manhandled. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, these are grown men. I'm watching the game with my wife. She always says these asinine things sometimes. And she says, that guy looks like a veteran. And they were talking about Robert Quinn. And it's because he is a veteran. And it's kind of, you think about like, remember when you were in high school and you were a freshman and you saw a senior, and like, that guy's a beard. Like, that's a man. Like, I don't even have facial hair yet. And you're going up against, it's Kendrick Green. He's a rookie 3rd round pick going up against these grown, men. And sometimes you're going to be on the losing end of that battle. I thought the defensive front for the Bears did really well, minus Khalil Mack. But Bryan, I want to get your take on the offensive line. What is it?
I thought it was a step back tonight. I really, I thought Najee could have had a much better stat line. Stat line doesn't matter, but if Najee's running the ball better, then you're putting together some second half drives where the defense isn't on the field that long, and you're not in the peril that you are. I mean, they were doing a lot of passing in the fourth quarter where they didn't need to be. And I think the offensive line, when we're talking about the rush, Najee wasn't getting the yards, and it was because of that. And Dave alluded to that. And Ben was getting crushed. I mean, all those hits, I'm glad that he's upright right now. But, 4 sacks, and I mean, things could have been worse in this game. They could have been a lot worse in this game with everything that happened. But the offensive line was suspect tonight. So if we're grading them, they're not getting a very high grade from me. I like the direction they were going into tonight. It just felt like, here we go again.
Yeah. I want to get Tom's $5 tip. He says, here's $1 for every win, Jeff. Impatient much? Yes, I'm very impatient. Ask my wife. Moore had his toughest game tonight. I agree. Hopefully we start trending up. Dave, I want to get your take on the offensive line, as you are an offensive lineman, former, and coached the position. What are your thoughts?
Well, like the first sack that Dan Moore gave up, I put it on Twitter. I didn't put much on Twitter because I was doing knee jerk. He got his feet crossed. That's what happened. And you can't get your feet crossed as an offensive lineman, because then that's why he looked like he was reaching. It's because he got his feet crossed and he couldn't step to make the block. That's something that's going to, you can't do as an offensive lineman, but something that you've got to get down. He's a young player. Things like that are going to happen. Then you had the completely blown, I would say, on Trey Turner, where the blitz came right up untouched and blew up Roethlisberger for like a 9-yard loss in a really key spot there. It was just a miscommunication. Bottom line is, the offensive line did not play well tonight compared to the last 2 weeks. I'm going to ask you guys this. The Steelers managed to win. And if they were going to win in a squeaker, don't you almost want to say, aren't you almost kind of glad that the offensive line got a reality check tonight? But they still got a win, much better than coming out and the Steelers getting a blowout and things like that. And I mean, of course, us as fans want it. But if you want to think about going forward next week on a short week against Detroit, who hasn't won a game, but the Steelers are on a short week, Detroit's coming on off a bye. Wouldn't you like to say, hey, look, we've got to stay with this. We can't take anything that we're doing for granted. Yes, you've got you had some praise going into last week with your improvements, but that doesn't mean anything until the next game. The next game means everything. So now you've got to turn it around and step up and do what you can do next week in order to keep this rolling, and just be grateful that you got to win.
What do you think about that, Bryan?
Yeah, you know what? I'll take the win, and he's right. If you're in a situation where the offensive line lets you down, but you still did escape, then hey, they did enough to help you win this game, and it's back to the drawing board. This is a teaching moment for this offensive line, so I would definitely subscribe to that same thing. If the offensive line lets you down and they lose the game because of it, then you've got a lot of problems. So if you could win in spite of them, that's great. Now you continue to try to clean that up. Now it's not a situation where, you got to realize we're 8 games into this experimental offensive line, and it's still a work in progress. And sometimes work in progress there's ebbs and flows. And tonight was definitely one of those situations where you're like, okay, it's not what we want, but we got the desired effect. So it all goes back to my age-old 2 a.m. theory. You just take it.
Dave, to answer your question, for me, I as a coach, I was always very big on these type of victories and these type of performances and the gut checks. As a coach, if you could find in a game like this, if you can find a way to win, and it's a way that you can kind of say, hey, you all started reading the paper clippings a little bit. You all started listening to all those Behind the Steel Curtain podcasts saying how good you were. Well, guess what happened? I mean, you just got smacked in the face on Monday Night Football. And if it weren't for a game-winning drive, you would have lost. And think about that. So I think that it's going to be good for this team in a lot of ways. The offensive line in particular, they're going to have to continue to work their tails off. It's not going to come easy. There's no doubt about it. I thought Kendrick Green, like I said, he was, my gosh, sometimes Najee Harris got the football and Kendrick Green was like in his lap. He was getting pushed directly back. You could see by the end of the game, Matt Canada, and rightfully so, had no confidence running the ball in the interior. They were getting nothing in that area. And honestly, they weren't getting much outside either. It was tough. It was tough sledding. I felt like the Chicago Bears, kudos to them. They did a great job keeping the Steelers offense off balance. They never got into a rhythm. There was never any, continuity in what they were doing. I literally felt like they were just throwing stuff against the wall and seeing if anything stuck, and nothing did. And they were able to piece together 29 points in a win. So there you have it. All right. Anything else about the offense before we take a quick break, Bryan?
No, I tell you what, I'm satisfied with the way we've explained it, Jeff.
There you go, Dave. You good?
It's almost 12:30. I'm fine.
That's right. That's right. We're fine, and we'll be right back. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. If you're listening on the podcast side, head over to part 2, where we talk about the defense, special teams, a lot to talk about there, and our final thoughts. Be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to part 2 of the Pittsburgh Steelers Postgame Show. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joined by Bryan Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield. We are getting ready to talk about the Steelers defense and their special teams and give our final thoughts, game balls, whatever we decide to do in this show. But we're going to talk about the defense first. So the Steelers come out and they kind of look like gangbusters. They only give up 3 points in the first half, followed by giving up 24 in the second. Is a tale of two halves for the Steelers defense. Let's look at some of the notables here. Total tackles, Minka Fitzpatrick had 8 total. TJ Watt was 7, Joe Schobert 5, Terrell Edmonds 4, Arthur Millette 4, Sutton 3, Taco Charlton 3, Devin Bush, Alex Highsmith both had 3, and then the rest are less than that. I want to talk first about the Steelers' rush defense. Chicago ran the ball well. We know about that. The Chicago Bears end up rushing for 136 yards on 26 carries for an average of 5.2. David Montgomery, who was just reinstated off IR, 13 carries, 63 yards. Justin Fields at 8 for 45. Darnell Mooney, 1 for 15 and a touchdown. And Khalil Herbert, 4 for 13. What do you think about the rush defense here, Bryan?
That's pretty much what they average. In fact, I think they are maybe they average a little bit more than that, but they are what is it? 136.6 is what they
it was
averaged on the
136.6
ground.
coming into the game. Yep.
And what did they get, Jeff?
136.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you held them to their average. This is a good running team. This is their bread and butter. This is what you expect them to do. I would have loved to have kept them around 100, but they did what they needed to do. They forced this team to have to pass, and they almost beat you with a pass. But they did not kill you with a running game. This team did not. That 136 yards, I don't think, is what could have done the Steelers in, because they won. So I don't want to say did them in, but I did not have a problem with keeping this good of a running team at their average.
All right, Dave, what are your thoughts on the run defense?
Yeah, part of that, it wouldn't have been over 100 yards if it wasn't for the quarterback, and I don't know that any of his runs were designed runs. I'm trying to think. Can you think of any design?
Maybe
one?
I know at least one. At least one was. That was it.
Yeah. So they were getting their rushing yards in the passing game, if you know what I'm saying. So, and I'll tell you, I think Justin Fields is getting better every week. But we'll get to that at another. We can talk that can be the Windy Cities podcast. So you'd like to see the Steelers do better. You'd like to see them take a team and hold them to below their average. I mean, that's what they did last week against the Browns. They didn't do it the 2 weeks prior to that. So it was. But part of me almost wants to look at. How much? What did they hold them to in the first half? You know what I'm saying? In the first half, I'm trying to bring that up right now, that the Steelers held them rushing. It was 75 yards in the first half. So it was even less than that in the second. I don't even know right now. It seems like it didn't seem like they were completely owning the running game. It's just they eventually got it going enough to where they racked up some yards. Does that make sense? Because it seemed like early in the game they couldn't run the ball at all.
Unless it was a scramble play and Justin Fields gets away from someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't feel like they were designed runs that were just gashing them. I can think of a couple of Montgomery runs where he was kind of dragging people and getting extra yards and really driving his legs and stuff like that. But I didn't feel like it was the running game. The defense was, I said this earlier in the podcast, I stand by my word, is that I felt like the defense, especially in the second half, they weren't sure how to attack Justin Fields. They really hadn't played a quarterback like that since they played Lamar Jackson last year in Baltimore. And that's where you rush, but you also have to be cognizant of where you're rushing and keeping them in the pocket. They didn't do that a lot. And like you said, that 45 yards from Fields is what puts him over that 100 mark. So keep it in mind. Tyler W. gives us $5. So we failed to contain Fields, and it almost cost us. Highsmith let him roll left so many times, once for a TD. Hope we learn from that for the Ravens. Highsmith, he got close a couple times. I was waiting for him to cash in. He just never did. Thanks, Mean Joe gives us $5. Did the defensive line look soft again other than Cam? One sickening moment was when Cam, going down late, relieved to see him return the next series. I kind of thought that was a veteran. Just all right. It's before the 2-minute warning. You can take a little break, give your defense a chance to get themselves acclimated. I'm not saying that's exactly what he did, because if anything, you want the clock to roll there. But still, you lose Cam Hayward, that would be a big blow to that defensive front. Let's talk about the secondary, though. And Dave, this will give you a chance to talk about Justin Fields, who finished the day 17 of 29 for 291 yards. 10-yard average, 1 touchdown, 1 interception that was gobbled up by Big Cam. Only sacked 3 times for 13 yards and an 89.9 yard rating. You're thinking that's not that bad, but you throw in the 8 for 45 rushing, and now all of a sudden he's contributed well over 300 yards of total offense. The Steelers defensively, let's see here. TJ Watt had a pass defense. Some might say it came at an inopportune time. Devin Bush had a pass defense. Cam Hayward obviously had one. Hayden was credited with 1 on Jimmy Graham, so 4 total pass defenses. The Steelers, in terms of pass rush, quarterback hits, they had 8, and they got sacked. They obviously sacked Fields 3 times. Let's talk a little bit about Justin Fields and the Steelers secondary. We'll break it down that way. Let's talk about the secondary first. Bryan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I got to bring up Justin Fields first to talk about the secondary, because the Bears on offense, their passing offense was ranked 32nd in the league. And if I'm not mistaken, they have averaged 126 yards a game passing. So here you come in and, man, he was throwing downfield to Cole Kmet, then a big one to Robinson, and then the touchdown to Mooney. And he kept throwing and the one to Graham. And it was just, I don't know whether it was the scheme or what was happening, but you just kept on seeing number 35, Arthur Millette, who I've been high on this year, just getting victimized the entire time. So they let this guy get away with a lot of passes, and I don't know why they weren't. I mean, this is a guy that threw 3 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions in his short time in the league, and they did not take advantage of it.
All right, Dave, what about?
Well, for me, I look at this. Justin Fields had 228 passing yards in the second half. Okay. That's where everything went. And they were trailing. I mean, they were down 14 points, right before the fourth quarter, scored right away inside the fourth quarter, put up 21 points in the fourth quarter. 7 of those we'll get to a little bit later, but they were throwing the ball because they needed to. Bryan talked about Arthur Millette. My thing with him is, why is he the deep guy? When they came out of the 2-minute warning, the long pass that set up the touchdown on the next play, why is he the deep guy when you see Joe Hayden up there taking away the underneath? I don't think that's Millette's strength. And when we see what we liked from him earlier this year, it was when he was making those good plays on the underneath stuff, not that he's a guy that's just going to be able to run with someone. I mean, they had a chance to get him earlier in the game, and he overthrew it. He was the guy that was closest there. That's the one I'm thinking about with Joe Hayden being short, being the underneath guy. I don't know that I like that scheme to put him in that situation, or did the Bears specifically do something to get him to be that guy that's there? I'd really have to break it down. Honestly, we need to ask KT Smith, his opinion on that, because I'm not a big secondary guy, if you know what I mean. But that's just what seemed odd to me. It seemed like that the Steelers, to have a guy like that playing there, I don't feel like he's been there all season. So the Bears, they got a lot of passing yards when they were trailing in a game, and it just so happened to get them back in the game. You'd like to see the Steelers be able to make a play and just kind of, put the kibosh on that.
Here's a potential answer for you, Dave, from Cam. I'm not sure how to say that. This is the NFL. The Bears adjusted to what the Steelers were doing, playing lots of cover 3. Then when the Steelers played cover 1, they hit the man coverage on the sideline on Millette, the weakness.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sounds exactly right to me.
Yeah.
I don't know well enough to say whether that's right or wrong, but that's a theory for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Greg S. gives us $5. Says, thankfully, the Boz God has returned. Except on the point after. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. Let's talk about the Steelers pass rush. The Steelers, as I said earlier, they did have 3 sacks, all of them from Trent Jordan Watt. I felt like Cam might have gotten a half on one of those.
I thought he
give it to him.
No, they didn't.
So it is what it is. Trent Jordan, that's TJ Watt, in case you're new to the show. He's getting close to the league lead in sacks. I believe he's only a half sack behind Mr. Garrett up there in Cleveland. So a good day for him, but the pass rush, I was very disappointed. I mean, this is a team that had given up a lot of sacks so far this season. The Steelers only get 3, and they're all from TJ Watt. Where is that next person that's going to step up? Bryan, what's your thoughts on the pass rush?
Exactly what you said. It was thrilling to watch TJ get in there, but if TJ's not working, no one else is. And that seemed apparent in this game. Nobody was moving towards the quarterback. Very few hits, too. There were not that many quarterback hits in this game as well. So, if you're comparing pass rushers, the Bears beat the Steelers as far as pass rushing goes. they had the better pass rushing unit. They were more effective. But when you have a guy like TJ Watt getting those 3 sacks, that's a big deal, and you still have it. So you can't discount the fact that he was a part of it. You just wanted more there. And you mentioned that he's a half a sack away from the lead. The guy that really took advantage, the reason he has the lead is Myles Garrett had 4.5 sacks against this Bears team. TJ had 3. But, TJ has, I looked at the stat lines of both in the middle of this game, and TJ is really more well-rounded. And you mentioned that he has 11.5 sacks now. The Steelers team record is 16, and that's James Harrison from 2008. You know what? That's probably going to go down this year. And when you're talking about a guy that somebody mentioned, he's the one of the youngest to get to 60 sacks. Well, the Steelers team record is once again Debo at 80.5. So he's that close to major team records, and his presence on this defense is saving this defense.
There you go. Dave?
Well, I will say one thing, that the Steelers did have more quarterback hits than what the Bears were given statistically. Now with these, I'm taking this straight from the Steelers media website, from the NFL stats, that they had the Bears with 5 quarterback hits. Now 4 of those were sacks, because they include sacks in that. The Steelers had 8, but they only came from 3 different players. TJ Watt had 3 of them, which were his 3 sacks. Cam Hayward had 3, and Alex Highsmith had 2. They were the only ones who got hits on the quarterback. So I think that's part of the reason why it felt like it was less tonight. But the pass rush, I kept saying to myself when the Bears got the ball back with 26 seconds left, and I'm like, a sack basically ends this game. 1 sack, that's all you got to do is get home. And they were so close. They were right there. But Justin Fields was pretty elusive. He was pretty elusive with that as well. So I honestly think, even though they lost the game, I think the Bears are a team that are on the rise. And I'm glad that the Steelers played them now and don't have to play them in another month.
Well, let me say about Justin Fields is that out of all the rookie quarterbacks that are seeing significant playing time so far this season, and there's a number of them that are, I think Justin Fields has I think he's one with the most potential. I hate that word. We know that. But, I mean, my goodness, if they can put a line together to protect him, his skill set. And I remember writing articles in the draft saying, if he were to fall to the Steelers, would you take him? And everyone was like, oh, no, he's going to be a bust, another Ohio State quarterback. He looks legit to me. I'll say it. Like I think he looks like a really good NFL quarterback, a guy that can run and throw. So you take that for what it's worth. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but Cam, we already highlighted one of their comments, said on a positive note, Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger tied Tom Brady for number 3 all time for comeback winning drives at 50. We'll have to double check on that. If so,
well, I know he was at 49 because they said it on what Yin's talking about. They were talking about
so
that.
He's at 49. So
he was go before this one, but I don't know what the numbers of the other players were that they were talking about. So I can't compare.
Drew Brees was close. I know Drew Brees was up there, and that would be cool. We'll have to look into that. Tom Muir gives us another $2. Said Wormley did good today. Cam had 3 quarterback hits. Thank you, Tom, for the tip. Wormley,
can I say something about
better.
Wormley?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I thought he actually tipped that ball first before Cam intercepted it. It was really tough to tell. You know what I'm saying? That was part of the reason that it fell to Cam. So, I mean, who cares who gets the stat on that? What all that matters is the Steelers got the ball. But I just noticed that Wormley was around at several times. But do you really want to be? You don't want to just be around. You want to be making plays as well.
Absolutely. Dave, you want to read your stat about points off turnovers?
Oh yeah, that was the first touchdown that the Steelers scored following a turnover this year, on a drive following a turnover. I mean, not that they technically a block punt's not a turnover, but they scored on that play. So whether you throw that in there or not, but the Steelers had not scored a touchdown as a points off a turnover yet this season, but they finally did that.
Some pot. Finally got some good pot. There you go.
I say poot.
Pot is
points
much better
off
than
of turnovers.
No, I never say that. I say points off turnovers. I don't say off of turnovers.
Okay, then they got some pot. Okay,
they got some pot. It sounds better anyways. All right, let's talk about the special teams. So Chris Boswell nails 54-yarder, 52-yarder, 40-yarder for the game winner, but misses a point after. And that leaves a bad taste in my mouth because when you think about the way the game progressed, you're like, oh, gosh. Like, if he didn't miss that extra point, we wouldn't be tied. It would have changed the dynamic. We'll put it that way. And then also you have Presley Harvin, who the Shankopotamus came out again, and it was a big spot, and they highlighted it on ESPN talking about how he can't kick it to the returner. I can't remember that guy's name, but still shanks it. Not a good day from Big Press. Let's see if I can get his numbers here. Big Press finishes with 5 kicks, 196, a 39-yard average. Blech. 1 touchback inside the 22 with a long of 46. Ray McLeod, I thought he had a good day returning him until the fumble. And it's funny, I'm sitting there, my wife and I are watching the game on the couch, and he fields the ball, and all I say is, hold on to the ball, just go down. I mean, how many times do you see players struggling for yardage, and that's when they lose the football? And what does he do? He's trying to make extra yards, fumbles the ball, pick up touchdown, and then everything else changes. So let's talk about the special teams a little bit. Danny Smith got his – boy, he went through like 15 packs of gum in this game. Brian, what do you think? Yeah, seriously.
Well, all I'm looking at is they gave that returner a lot of room. And, even where they came up big on that play where Boswell almost got crushed, by the way, and I was holding my breath when Bos went to recover that fumble, and somebody asked Tomlin about it, and he played it off. But, that was a situation where that guy had a very nice return on that play. And so that could have been huge too. So I was not overly impressed with the special teams. Now, of course, Bos is Bos. Bos, 2+ 50s. That's amazing. Or 250 pluses, excuse me. That was absolutely incredible. That other field goal was big, but I tell you what, I'm a little upset because I predicted the Steelers were going to score 30 in this game, and Bos cost me a 30.
Hey,
right,
I thought I was looking good when I said that they were going to hold them to single digits because, they'd only given up 6 points through 3 quarters.
And then the fourth quarter happened.
Yes. And
But
part of that was special teams.
But we all predicted a win,
Yeah.
and that came true.
They
So
just didn't
take it
cover,
out.
so none of us got it right on
Who
our
cares?
staff.
Who
picks.
cares?
So yeah, who cares?
Actually, Brian did get it right. He took the Bears getting points. I checked that today.
He did, and he
He's
got
the
roasted for it too.
He was the only person that took the Bears getting points, even though his amended
article and completely went against that.
You know what? I mean, there are times when I get influenced by the hype of it too. Remember, I'm a fan too.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, talk about special teams.
The fumble was bad. I mean, it was a game-changing play. Let's just say this. That game ended up being so close because of the fumble. I mean, because it wasn't just a fumble. It was returned for a touchdown. The fumble that the Steelers got on the turnover, did they turn that into a field goal? Or
that was a sack, but Roethlisberger got sacked on that drive, pushed him out of field goal range.
That's what I
thought. They ended up having to punt.
They didn't get any points out. They didn't get any pot on that one there, Jeff.
No pot
on that one. But man, when on your one fumble that you have, it's on special teams and the team turns it into 7 points. The Steelers are very lucky that they had that game, that they were basically already 8 points to the good at that time. Not 9 points to the good because they ended up winning by 2, right? Yeah. So I mean, that's huge. And honestly, people were going to want to give Ray such a hard time with that. Yeah, you can't fumble it. I mean, Tomlin said in his post-game press conference, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if he was down or what, because he said, he wasn't. He's like, you can't do that. You just can't do that, because he had some decent returns tonight other than that. But then you forget about all the other stuff. I mean, he had a good return on the first punt that he got of the game and put the Steelers in good field position to go down and get that touchdown. But you don't remember any of that. All you remember is that he gave up the ball there, because you're the one thing you can't do as a returner.
Yeah, the fumble's bad. I got to be honest. I get trolled by Jordan Berry people every time Big Press shanks one. We need Jordan Berry back. Like, my issue was never
literally just came up in the live chat.
Honestly, though, my issue was never with Jordan Berry, the player. It was with his inconsistency, and that's exactly what we're seeing from Presley Harvin. The only pass that he gets is he's a rookie, and everyone's like, "Well, he's a rookie. He's learning." Okay, well, at what point is that not a crutch that you can lean on? You know, I like Big Press because he pushed Jordan Berry off, but I want more consistency, so I'm not happy with Big Press. You got to be more consistent. My goodness, that's exactly what I've been screaming about the entire Jordan Berry era, if there is such a thing. So turning the ball over, and like you said, Ray, I don't think they make any sweeping changes, but that's just you just can't do it. Cannot do it. What did you all think about that fumble, and also with the catch down the sideline in regards to the challenges? I'm curious your take, whether you thought there were good calls being upheld or not. Bryan, we'll start with you.
I really wanted them to look at the fumble more. And are we talking about the Chicago Bear?
Yeah, it was a Gibson, or I think
one where it looked like he fumbled. I'm not sure at this point, but I kind of thought that was not a completion. I really on the touchdown on the corner of the end zone.
Goodwin. It was Goodwin. Sorry.
Goodwin. Yeah. I kind of thought that was a fumble. Now, in the touchdown in the end zone, are you talking about that one where he appeared to get both feet in bounds? Is that what you're talking about? Because I'm a little...
No, he's talking about
the catch down the sideline that Tomlin challenged. It looked like the ball was definitely moving a little bit, and he never completed the catch, which is not part of the rule anymore.
Okay.
That was the Goodwin play. But then also the fumble, there's a lot of people that didn't think that Ray McCloud fumbled if they're following that same line of thinking, and the fact that he didn't technically ever lose control of the ball before his elbow hit the ground. And so it's kind of like, well, what's the difference if the guy has possession and it's moving between his forearms? And it looked like Ray was kind of doing the same thing when his elbow hit the ground. I just was curious what your take was on that.
Yeah, I really didn't think that Ray's fumble was a fumble, and that completion. I kind of thought that the Steelers could have at least got one of those back. You know, not both. I mean, I know the referees were in question a lot on the side of the Steelers. But there were some bad calls against the Steelers as well. Seemed like there were more questionable ones going against Chicago. I mean, we're not going to give those back. But I would have loved to have had one of those back that were against the Steelers, because I really thought that Ray could have come back. I didn't think it was a fumble as much. Now, Brian Greasy thought it was a fumble, and Louis Riddick thought it was a fumble, but those guys, I mean, man, it's not what it used to be in the Monday Night Booth. I will just say that. Man, those guys. Yeah,
it's not good.
I said during the game, can Louis Riddick be hired as a GM just so he can shut up?
Yeah, I mean, happened with Mayock, so I mean,
that's a good point.
So you know what, I just I was a little confused on that, because there were so many things that they were looking at that could have gone either way, but those two plays, yeah, I thought they were questionable.
Dave, any thoughts on that?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts on that. You ready? Okay, so let's let's go with the Ray fumble. To me, I can agree that they call that a fumble, and here's why: because when he ultimately loses the ball, he loses possession of the ball. When they go back and look at it on replay, now remember, there would have had to been enough to overturn it. And that's what I think is true basically in both of these cases. But the one with Ray, when you go back and you're like, oh, the ball was moving, knowing that it ultimately comes out, you can kind of look at the ball moving as being that's when the fumble began, if you know what I'm saying. Because because once it's moving, it's not like he lost it. It was moving and then he lost it later. It's not what they assume when they make that call. So I understand why they went with that one. And as soon as I saw the replay, I'm like, oh no, this is going to stand as a touchdown. I mean, it's bad, but it's what it was. On the throw on the sidelines, I was saying it's going to stay because it's a Tomlin challenge, and it just seems, it's not a knock on Mike Tomlin. It just seems like every time he challenges a play and it looks like it should be overturned, It isn't. But the thing is moving it around and turning the ball onto the back of your hand. If that's securing the ball, then why weren't the Steelers the number 1 seed in 2017? Because that's, because it's not surviving the ground. It's does rolling the ball along your appendage count, as Jesse James's hands rode under that ball against the Patriots. If that doesn't count as possession there, then it shouldn't count as possession here, if you know what I'm saying. Because they didn't change that part of the rule. They changed the whole, surviving the ground part. So the ball was moving around a lot. To me, it goes right back to the same thing with Ray, is that the ball was moving around and he ultimately lost control of it. Just like I said with the Ray thing, knowing that he ultimately lost control of it afterwards, then you got to look back to say, when did he ever truly secure it? Which is what they did with Ray, and they should have done on that catch. The problem was it probably was too difficult to overturn it, or like I say, at that point of the game, if not, the Steelers could have possibly really opened that game up if they don't give them that 50 yards on that play, and they want to keep it more competitive for a national audience. But that's just the way I look at it.
Go ahead and read this, Dave.
The ball moved in Ray's arms before he was down, but it never came out until the Bears poked it out with Ray's entire body on the ground. That's what you can't tell. You can't tell that from the replay, so that's why they weren't going to overturn it. Does that make sense? I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm just saying, knowing that ultimately it came out, that's what they called it. They looked back, and you couldn't say could you say for sure when that ball was moving that he had control of it? Because that's what they would absolutely have to say beyond a shadow of a doubt in order to overturn that call. And it was a huge play at the time.
And that was a $5 tip from Kyle Smith. Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate that for sure. All right. Yeah, the officiating, we could probably do a whole podcast on it. We've talked about everything, every facet of this game. I want to get final thoughts here. Bryan, what are your final thoughts about the Pittsburgh Steelers 29-27 win on Monday Night Football?
All right. Everybody wanted style points in this game. That's just not what the NFL is anymore. There's a lot less style points, a lot less big wins. It seems like especially these primetime games, they end up going down to the wire. We saw some games yesterday. The Buffalo Bills lost 9-6 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're a Bills fan right now, you are up in arms because your team lost. The Ravens pulled a game out that it looked like they were going to lose. You had favorites going down yesterday. And the one favorite that did not go down was the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight. Now, of course, the Ravens didn't go down either. There were other favorites that didn't go down. But when you look at it, you're getting an ugly team. This is not a polished team. But when they keep on winning, no matter how they win, you take it and you accept it. And you hope they build on it, and you don't stop. There's a lot of people upset about the way they played. I mean, gosh, 7 or 8 players, these guys one cut in the live chat, and that's what they want. And I get it, I understand, but you can't just say that we're not going to take this game and we're not going to enjoy this win. I'm going to enjoy this win. Were a lot of the calls against the Bears, were they ones that made me scratch my head too? That if I was a Chicago fan, I'd be upset about? Absolutely. Yeah, but you don't give them back. Just like Green Bay did not give back the game to the Steelers when that was egregious, the Joe Hayden offside. It was egregious. There's other plays we can talk about in the other losses to the Raiders and to the Bengals as well, where the Steelers got screwed. We're not talking about that. All we're talking about right now is that the Steelers won this game, and as a fan, you're going to take it. Sure, you could be concerned about next week and the rest of the year and forward, but Dave Schofield talks all the time about stacking wins. You get that next win. Well, this was the 5th win, and you're now 5-3, and really, I'm celebrating this.
All right, Dave, final thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of said it before. As much as the fans would have loved for for that game to end up kind of more how it was, and let's say they would have won it all, I don't know, like 23-6 or something like that. Oh, that would have felt so much better, but it's not the way it played out. But honestly, moving forward, this hard fought have to come from behind victory might be better for you in the long run. If you want to look for a silver lining, but no, it's still a win. It seems like the two teams at the top of the AFC North right now are just finding ways to win in games that they shouldn't necessarily win. And that's what you need to do in the NFL. You need to, we talked about it yesterday when we were talking about, the AFC North wrap up, is that the AFC seems pretty open right now. And what you need to do is find ways to win along the way and get hot at the end. And that's all the Steelers need to do. Keep setting yourself up. They're not playing perfect football by any means. We all can see that as fans. But what would be nice is if they could get to that level at the end of the season to finish it up and roll into the postseason, because they got wins along the way. So they got to keep getting the wins along the way, because it's going to be a tough stretch. They're going to be battle tested by the time they get there. But bottom line is, right now in the loss column, the Steelers are only one game out of the top spot in the AFC right now. So you just got to keep doing what you can do with the teams that are there that you're playing, because you got to get the wins while they're there to be gotten, even if it's ugly.
Bryan, I'll let you answer this one by Evgeny Crosby gives $4.99. Said, I agree with everything you guys just said, but this defense is concerning. Bryan, you concerned about the defense?
I feel like it's becoming a bend, but not break defense. It broke a little bit, but wow, the offense bailed them out tonight because they had time. You said something earlier, Jeff, or maybe Dave said it, about how this was a rookie mobile quarterback that they were not able to contain, and they were not able to do what they could do with them. I would not be absolutely too concerned about the defense. They still did enough to control this game and win, and we've seen it over time. This is just, once again, this is becoming a league where games are going to get tighter, but if you still continue to find ways to win, you will be fine.
I agree with that 100%. Okay, my final thoughts on the game are this. As I sit here and look at my notepad and I write down the Steelers' victory, I noticed a couple things. First, they're in second place in the AFC North. Sole possession of second place behind the 6-2 Ravens and ahead of the 5-4 Browns and Bengals. I also noticed that there's no third column. No, not because no one's tied a game yet, but because there's no column for ugly wins. It's just wins and losses. And the Steelers have now won 4 games in a row. We as fans, think about when they were 1-3, they had lost 3 in a row. If someone would have come up to you and said, hey, you be down with the Steelers winning the next 4, even if some of them are ugly and not that quality, you'd probably say, I'll take whatever we can get at this point. So beggars can't be choosers. Take the W. 5-3, keep stacking wins. Now we get ready we help you, the fans, get ready for the Week 10 game against the Detroit Lions at Heinz Field. So like I said, BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Steelers. It's going to be a fast and furious week, a quick turnaround. We will have everything for you there, as well as on our podcast platform. Wherever you get your podcasts, or Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain, subscribe, follow, whatever you have to do so that you do not miss a thing. For all of you that stayed up late with us, thank you very much for hanging with us. On the podcast side, thank you very much. Steelers win. It's a Victory Tuesday. It sounds really weird, but it's true. So, all right, we'll see you next week after the Detroit Lions game on Sunday at 1 o'clock, thankfully. Have a good day, everyone. Go Steelers.